Alright, so before we get into the tutorial where I show you how to build this lovely scene, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the viewports and panels that are existing kind of all around here and what they do. So if you go to Window, you'll notice that there's all these different little panels you can choose. And if you ever miss any, this is where you're going to find them. So you have the modes, which is going to allow you to place your basic objects, your lights, and you just drag them out here in order to place them. You can see that there's a nice little light right there. Down here is the details panel, and this is going to give you all the settings. So for my light, I can change the color, and I can change the intensity, the radius, the strength of the light. There it is. This number stops at 1000, but I can actually add some more zeros if I want to. It will get ridiculously bright at that point, but it is an option. Up here is the world outliner, and I think I mentioned this before. This is where you're going to find all of your objects that are in the level, and you can see if you click on them, it highlights them. So if you wanted to get rid of a bunch of them, you could just select them all by holding down Shift. It's a good idea to stay organized, to create folders for these, and you can do that by, I thought you could do it by right-clicking, but now I'm forgetting in front of all of you. How embarrassing. You click on this button up here to create a new folder. And so I could say like wall, and then I could take all my wall stuff and stick it inside there. My other wall panels are here, so I'll just select them and drag them into there. Down here, as I said before, is the detail panel. So if I wanted to give this wall a texture, I could do so under materials, and let's just give it stone. It'll take a second for it to load, and then there you go. Why is it red? Because I have a big fat red light right there, but you can see on this side what else it could look like. Other than that, we have a couple other things I want to go over. There is a few different ways you can look at the view. So let's say that I wanted to I didn't want to worry about lighting, and I just kind of wanted to see, oh wait, no, actually, before I do that, I should go over the rest of the panels. Hang on. So this is the world setting. Make sure that if you get here, you go back to details, otherwise you'll get confused. The world setting is for the entire world. This determines which game mode you're playing. Usually it's like first-person shooter. And if you click on this little drop-down, you'll be able to see what your default character is, your pawn, and then all these other settings, which are going to be important later on in the year. You can adjust, so like you could take off gravity and, excuse me, and you could set it to like negative if you wanted to. Excuse me. So when I turn on physics for this wall, let's go ahead and do that real quick. Let me go to the details, I'll turn on physics, and then watch what happens when I hit play. That wall does not go down. And I think that if I adjust this to like -10, we should be able to see the wall float up in the sky. And I think it's not doing it because it's clipping to this object. Let me just move it over. And I'll hit play. No, I thought it would go up in the sky, but it's not. It tells me there's an error, and I can click on this to see what the error is. It says trying to simulate physics does not work because of a collision event. So I'm not going to worry about that right now because I don't want to waste time. But yeah, usually that would work. There must be something with this object that doesn't allow that to occur. Other than that, world settings, there are some like lighting stuff. I'm not going to get into that right now, but just know that that's there. So go back to details. Down here you have your content browser, and all your stuff is in these folders. So if I wanted to look for like pre-made blueprints, here's a little wall lamp. I could throw this on there, and you can see that it already emits light, and I can rotate it so that it sticks right on the wall. I can't really see what's happening here. If you tap G, you can get rid of all that stuff. That is kind of like the game settings. So let me, That's really hard to work with. Anyway, there it is. And you can see it just snaps to the wall right there. So again, tap G if you want to get rid of all that stuff right there. In case you're wondering what all this stuff is, these are different things. This is like your lighting, your cloud movement, your fog, sound that's going to be playing when the game starts. This is a reflection capture, which is kind of make sure that the reflections look proper. This is where your player start is. This is when you hit play. This is where your player is going to start every time. And I think that's about it for the panels. If you want to get into your level blueprints, which we'll get into later, you go up here and you just click open level blueprints, and this will take you to the blueprints for the level itself. Right now there are none, but if I were to add one, let's say in the event begin play, which means when the game begins, let's just have it print a string that says hello. So when I hit compile, I close this and I hit play, you'll see that in the top left hand corner it said hello for just a second. Let me show you that again. Play, and there it is. As far as on this top panel, this right here is going to give you some options such as the playing and also different views. So if you click on next to play, there's like some options for play. Generally, you just want to make sure it's in selected viewport. You could start the play wherever your camera is or on the player start. Sometimes for testing, it's good to do camera location. So if I wanted to say, okay, what does the game look like from here? So let me hit play. And then you'll start from that location. Whereas if it's on player start, it's just going to send you right back over here. The views can also be useful. If you go up here to perspective, you can also look at top view or a front view, which I don't use super often, but there are times when that could be useful. And the difference between a front view and a perspective view, perspective, objects get smaller in the background. A front view, it would kind of just show everything from a single plane, and so objects in the background would not get any bigger or smaller. And I'm trying to find my building, but I think it's blocked by the hills. So can be useful at times. There you go. And you can see that in this view, everything is just kind of on one single plane. There's back to perspective. You can also determine whether or not you want it to show lit or unlit. Unlit means it's just all the objects where they are. You can still see the textures, but there's no lighting really involved. And that can be useful for testing, especially in dark areas. And then you can go to lit when you're ready to see what it's going to look like lit. There is a bunch of other options in view mode. You can check the wireframe. You can look at the detail lighting, which will kind of show you what the lighting is looking like being cast from your various lights. So it kind of removes the other lighting. You can look at only lighting, and that gets rid of the textures, so you only see the lights. You'll notice that when I go to only lighting, it gets rid of some of these bumps right here, and that's because the texture contains some normal maps which create the illusion of kind of scattering the light, but we'll get into that later. You can look at reflections, and so any object that has a reflection, it will be shown there. And then you can there's a bunch of other stuff you can do, and there's some for like looking at error checking, so you can like visualize the I don't know, a bunch of these texture options right here. And then you can adjust the exposure. Instead of being automatic, you can say, you know what, let's fix it at 0. So when I go back to lit, it fixes it like this. But if I wanted to make it darker, I could say like fixed at -4, and you can see what the scene would look like maybe in a night scene. Other than that, couple other things. Your data is going to be stored in your documents folder under Unreal Projects. And if I were to click on this one, it's all in the content. All the stuff down here is in your content folder. Do not move these folders while you're playing the game, because that can cause problems. But when you're done, you can add stuff to these folders, and then when you open your game, they will be here. There's other ways of importing, but I'll get into that later. when you start the Epic Game Launcher, which is going to have all of your levels are going to be right here, and might have a bunch of plugins and things you can purchase and add to your project. When you click launch, this thing will appear right here. It'll give you a chance to look at your projects, but if you want to create a new project, you can do so. And there's a bunch of options right here. You can create it with or without starter content. And if you want to, you can do C++ instead of blueprints, which is basically if you want to manually write your code. We're not going to be doing that in this class, but it is an option if that's something you want to do in the future. Some people prefer blueprints, some people prefer code. Usually it's a mix of both, and they can each kind of do different things. So I think that's about it for now, and yeah, goodbye.